The mansion sat on top of a hill, shining like something out of a dream. White oak floors, 12-foot windows, and walls so pristine they didn't dare hold memories. But beneath the gloss, there was something colder than silence. There was absence, the kind that hums through the hallways long after a voice has gone quiet. Inside, behind glass walls and locked routines, lived a boy who hadn't spoken in nearly 3 years. Lucas Turner, 6 years old, silent since the day he lost his mother. One by one the experts came, nannies with degrees from Ivy League schools, therapists with gentle hands and perfect plans. All of them left, because no matter what they tried, the boy said nothing. He didn't cry, he didn't scream, he just watched. And so the house adjusted. It stayed clean. It stayed quiet. Until one rainy Monday morning, a maid from Atlanta walked through the front door and saw something no one else did. It was still raining when she arrived. Angela Martin, 28, carried no clipboard, no credentials, just a duffel bag and a calmness that didn't need to explain itself. She wasn't brought in to teach or care or heal. She was brought in to clean. The butler met her at the gate. No handshake, no warmth, just procedure. He walked her through a corridor of silence, marble floors, towering art, reflections in glass that looked more like ghosts than people. The house was spotless, but it wasn't alive, and it hadn't been for a long time. At the end of the west wing, he stopped at a closed door. "The nursery," he said, and walked away. Angela stepped inside. The room was quiet, not peaceful, but heavy. Curtains drawn halfway, a faded rug, a shelf lined with untouched books, and by the window, knees pulled to his chest, a small boy sat with a stuffed dog in his lap. He didn't turn, didn't blink. Lucas. Angela didn't speak. She didn't kneel. She didn't call his name. She just stood there, long enough to feel the silence, long enough to understand. This wasn't defiance. This was distance, the kind that grief builds brick by brick. And in that moment, without even knowing why, she chose to stay. But before we begin, click subscribe, like this video, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. I hope this story reminds you. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the deepest truths. The Turner estate stretched across 7 acres, lined with cypress trees that stood like guards at the edge of the driveway. Everything looked designed, the house, the garden, even the stillness. Inside, the mansion was pristine, not just clean, but curated, like a museum where nothing was allowed to feel too lived in. It smelled faintly of polished wood and money. Anthony Turner, 40, tech mogul and CEO of Trivexa Technologies, hadn't always been cold, but the day his wife died, something inside him stopped. Her accident happened on Lucas's 3rd birthday. She was on her way home with balloons. She never made it to the party. And since that day, Lucas hadn't spoken a single word. At first, they called it trauma, then selective mutism. Eventually, even the experts stopped naming it. Anthony paid for the best, therapists, speech specialists, nannies with glowing references, but none of them lasted. One nanny broke down in tears in the front hall. Another left a note on the kitchen counter that just said, "He's not responding, I'm sorry." Lucas wasn't violent. He wasn't disruptive. He just disappeared in plain sight. He spent most of his days in the nursery, a large room at the far end of the west wing. It had once been filled with toys, books, little signs of life. Now it felt like a holding cell made soft by memory. No one was allowed to push him. No one dared try anymore. The staff moved like shadows, efficient, respectful, distant. Angela noticed it her first morning. They kept their voices low, avoided questions, as if connection itself had become a risk. Her schedule was simple: clean the 3rd floor, handle laundry, stay out of the nursery. But that first day the butler had opened the door anyway. She hadn't asked why. Now, each morning, she found herself drifting toward that door. Lucas was always there, same spot, by the window. He didn't flinch when she entered, didn't move when she passed. She would tidy the shelf, refold the blanket, dust around him carefully, respectfully. But one morning, she placed a toy dog beside him, a replica of the one already in his lap. She didn't expect anything, didn't speak. She just signed one word as she set it down. Dog. No reaction. But she stayed a second longer than usual. The next day she signed again. This time, play. She didn't wait for a response. She just left 2 wooden blocks nearby. Lucas glanced at them. Not long, just a flick of his eyes. But she saw it. That night, as she folded laundry in the servants' quarters, she stared at her hands. They still remembered every sign. Signs she'd used growing up with her older sister, who was born deaf. It had been years since she used them this way, but the muscle memory was still there, along with something else. Hope. By the end of the week, she had formed a quiet rhythm. She wouldn't ask. She wouldn't expect. She would just show up. With hands that spoke in silence. And trust that someone was still listening. Lucas barely moved. Each morning, he sat curled up in the same spot, knees drawn in, a stuffed dog clutched to his chest, his eyes trained on something far beyond the glass. Not the garden, not the sky. Somewhere farther. Angela never spoke when she entered. She didn't announce herself, didn't ask for his name. She just carried on, folding blankets, dusting shelves, placing quiet offerings where he could reach them, if he wanted to. A flower once. A small toy car another day. One morning, she left 2 crayons and a folded napkin. He didn't touch them. But he noticed. The way his eyes flicked just once to where her hand had been, it was small, barely there. But it was enough. Angela never pushed. She knew better than to force a child to come forward. Sometimes the door had to open from the inside. She thought often of her sister. Growing up, they'd spent entire afternoons with their hands in the air, shaping words that couldn't be heard, only felt. Angela had learned sign language before she learned to ride a bike. It wasn't something she advertised. Most people didn't care. But in that quiet house, it became the one thing that felt alive inside her. One rainy afternoon, the air thick with mist, she lingered a little longer in the nursery. Lucas was seated in his usual place, motionless, silent. Angela walked slowly to the bookshelf, pretending to dust. Then, without turning, she raised one hand and gently signed the word, "Hello." A pause, no response. But she caught it, a small twitch in his fingers, as if some part of him remembered how to move. She didn't try again. Not that day. That night, as thunder rolled far in the distance, Angela lay awake in the small room the staff had given her. The walls were thin. She could hear Anthony Turner pacing his office down the hall, his voice sharp, tired. "He's not improving. We've tried everything. He doesn't respond to anyone." Another voice, someone on speaker. A therapist, maybe. "Some children take longer, but 3 years. I'm sorry, Mr. Turner. I just don't see a path forward." Angela sat up slowly, hands in her lap. She traced the word friend in the air, silently, thoughtfully. The next morning, something was different. When she walked into the nursery, Lucas looked up. Only for a second, but his eyes met hers. Angela didn't react, didn't smile. She just walked over, knelt gently, and laid a photograph on the rug, one she'd found in the back of her wallet. It was old, a picture of her and her sister as kids. Her sister's hands caught mid-motion in a sign. Angela smiling, small and proud beside her. Lucas blinked. Slowly, cautiously, he leaned forward and pointed. Not at her, not at the photo, but at the motion frozen in the picture. Angela raised her hands. And signed, "Sister." Lucas tilted his head. His brows pulled slightly inward. He didn't look confused. He looked curious. Then, like wind brushing across still water, his fingers moved, clumsy, unsteady, but deliberate. He signed it back. "Sister." Angela's breath caught in her throat. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. She smiled, soft but not overwhelming. Then, slowly, she signed a second word. "Friend." Lucas paused. Then, carefully, he copied her and pressed the sign to his chest. "Friend." Angela stepped out into the hallway that day with trembling hands. No one had seen it. No one would have believed it. But something had shifted. The silence hadn't ended. Not yet. But for the first time, it was starting to listen back. It started with one word. Sister. Spoken not with a voice, but with hesitant fingers. Lucas hadn't looked away that day. He'd watched Angela's hands move, curious, cautious, then mirrored them like he was remembering a dream someone once told him. And when he pressed friend to his chest, something shifted, not just in him, in the room, in the silence. From that moment on, Angela stopped thinking like a maid. She still folded sheets, still wiped counters. But her eyes watched for small things, fingers twitching, glances held a second longer, the way Lucas sat just a little closer to the edge of the rug each day. She never pushed, she never praised too loudly. Connection, she knew, didn't grow under pressure. She began signing simple words while she worked. Toy, book, quiet, more. Sometimes she'd leave a picture book open beside him, signing the word for each image as she dusted nearby. She never asked him to copy her, but she always left space, just in case he wanted to try. And slowly, he did. One afternoon, a photo slipped from her apron pocket. It landed face up on the nursery rug, a snapshot of Angela and her sister as teenagers, arms around each other, hands caught mid-sign. Angela reached down to pick it up, but Lucas was faster. He held the photo gently, his thumb brushing over the crease down the center. Then he looked up at her, right into her eyes. Angela didn't speak. She just signed the word again. Sister. Lucas nodded, slow, uncertain. She signed it again. He copied her. Then he pointed to her and signed it once more. Angela felt her breath catch. It wasn't just understanding, it was recognition. From there, a quiet rhythm began to grow. She'd sign block, then leave two on the floor beside him. He'd stack them slowly, then glance up for the next cue. She signed cookie while passing him a warm one wrapped in a napkin. His lips twitched, almost a smile. In the afternoons, she'd bring flashcards and arrange them like a game. She signed dog, then pointed to the worn stuffed animal he never let go of. He hugged it tighter, then signed it back. Sometimes he got it wrong, but she never corrected him, not with words, not with her face. She just signed it again, slower, softer, and waited. Angela never told anyone. Not the staff, not his father. This belonged to them. A secret space, quiet and safe, where Lucas could try without being tested. He began following her around the room with his eyes, sometimes even his feet. He'd sit a few steps away while she folded laundry. He'd hover behind her as she rinsed a teacup or wiped down the window pane. He was still silent, still guarded, but every now and then, when she turned around, he was already watching. One evening, as golden light stretched across the nursery floor, Angela signed the word, laugh. Lucas blinked. She signed it again, then smiled. A real one, bright, unfiltered. He didn't mimic her, not right away, but then he made a sound, tiny, barely audible, a half-giggle, half-gasp that slipped out before he could catch it. Angela froze. Lucas looked startled too, like he'd surprised himself. His hands dropped. He shrank back. Angela didn't rush in. She didn't cry. She just knelt down beside him, smiled gently, and signed, okay. His shoulders relaxed, and for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel like something heavy. It felt like a language, finally beginning to speak. It began without ceremony, no breakthrough moment, no applause, just two hands, hers, patient and slow, and his, beginning to follow. Each morning, Angela returned to the nursery like it was sacred ground, not to clean, but to show up for him. They never spoke. But conversation bloomed in the silence. More, play, friend, cookie. Lucas learned them all. Some crooked, some backwards, but always his. Their world became a quiet routine stitched together in gestures. In the mornings, they folded laundry together. Angela signed colors as she matched socks. Lucas nodded or pointed or tried the signs himself, Slow, sometimes unsure, but always watching, always learning. In the afternoons they baked. Angela taught him sugar, egg, hot, cold. He cracked eggs like a scientist, too careful, too serious for a boy his age. When cookies burned, he signed oops and looked up for her reaction. She only smiled, signed try again, and passed him a new bowl. One day she brought a small Bluetooth speaker into the nursery. She didn't ask permission, just placed it on the rug and turned on soft music. No lyrics, just quiet piano. Then she placed his hand over the speaker. Lucas flinched at first, then stilled. His palm sat there, absorbing the vibration like sunlight. Angela signed, music. Lucas touched the speaker again, then his chest, then her hand. Angela didn't speak. She just signed it again. Music. And he smiled. A real one. They didn't tell anyone. Not the butler, not the cook, not the man in the glass-walled office down the hall. This was theirs. A secret stitched in silence, where nothing had to be explained or approved. Where one child was learning to speak, not with his voice, but with trust. Have you ever shared a language with someone that didn't need words? A glance, a gesture, a kind of knowing no one else understood. Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Your voice matters, even in silence. Angela could feel it, the shift in the air each time he greeted her at the door. He never ran, never spoke, but he waited. Once she signed son and pointed to the garden beyond the window. Lucas walked over without hesitation. Together they watched the light crawl over the hedges, golden and slow. He signed son back. Then, hesitating, he signed happy. Angela's chest tightened. She didn't show it. She just nodded and signed it back. He began humming softly. Not a tune, just a breathy vibration. She didn't call it singing. She just let it be his. In the still moments between tasks, they built towers from blocks. Every color had a name. Every movement had meaning. And when she signed family once, offhand, almost carelessly, Lucas froze. His hands lifted slowly, unsure. Family. He signed it back. Then, pointing to himself and to her, he repeated it, not fast, not mimicked, deliberate. You are my family. Angela didn't move, couldn't. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She simply reached for his hand and signed, me too. Anthony Turner was a man who solved problems for a living. Glitches, bugs, bad code. He could spot them in seconds. He'd built an empire that way, cold precision. No room for failure, no time for emotion. But nothing about his son made sense. 3 years of silence, hundreds of thousands spent on therapists, dozens of caregivers, all walking away the same way, tired, defeated, empty. Now there was only the maid, quiet, consistent, still here. Anthony didn't pay her much attention. She was background, like the artwork on the walls or the music that played in his car. Useful, but unremarkable. What he didn't notice was how his son had started changing. Lucas still didn't speak, but he watched now, followed movement, showed curiosity. He was learning, growing, softly. And secretly. Angela guarded that progress like a thread made of glass. She knew Anthony wouldn't understand. Not yet. Not the way things were. One afternoon, she tried. She was refilling the kitchen water filter when he walked in, phone pressed to his ear. Angela waited until he ended the call, then quietly, "He's responding." Anthony barely looked up. To what? To sign language, she said gently. Not all the time, but it's working. He's communicating. Anthony blinked, like she'd spoken in a different language. With his hands? He asked flatly. Angela nodded. There was a pause, a wall settling between them. Then Anthony looked down at his watch. If he's not speaking, he's not progressing. He walked out before she could say anything more. The next morning, Lucas was withdrawn again. He sat by the window but didn't glance her way, didn't sign, didn't move. Angela didn't need to ask why. He'd heard them. She could see it in his shoulders, hunched and tight like he was bracing for something. She sat beside him. Signed okay? Lucas didn't respond. Not right away. Then slowly, sad. Angela kept her hands steady. Why? She signed. Lucas hesitated. His fingers moved, slow and shaky. Dad. That one word. It landed like a weight in the room. Angela didn't reply. She didn't need to, because in that moment she saw it clearer than ever. Lucas wasn't silent by choice. He was silent because he had no space to speak. Later that night, Angela passed Anthony in the hallway. He didn't stop, but she did. "Your son's trying," she said, voice soft but certain. Anthony turned, eyes tired, mouth tight. "And?" Angela held his gaze. "You don't have to understand it yet. Just don't shut it down before it has a chance to become something." He didn't reply, just stared at her, as if waiting for her to back down. She didn't. Back in the nursery, Lucas was waiting. He looked up when she walked in, signed friend, then pointed at her. Angela smiled, knelt beside him, and signed it back. Friend. Then she added something new. Brave. Lucas tilted his head, tried the sign, fumbled it. Angela corrected it gently. He tried again. This time, perfect. And for the first time in a long time. Angela let herself hope. The rain came down harder than usual that afternoon. It tapped gently at the tall glass windows of the conservatory, a room filled with ferns, soft light, and the quiet echo of forgotten joy. Angela brought Lucas there after lunch. It had become their favorite place, a space untouched by routine, by expectations, by noise. She laid a soft rug on the floor, spread out the flashcards. No pressure, no structure, just invitation. Lucas settled across from her, cross-legged, his stuffed dog tucked under one arm. Angela smiled, signed family. Lucas paused. His fingers moved, slowly, carefully, and repeated the sign. Then he pointed to her and signed it again. Family. Not playful, not guessing, certain. Angela's throat tightened. She tried to sign back, but her hands shook. He reached forward, touched her wrist. Their eyes met. And in that still sacred moment, he signed something new. You, me, family. Angela blinked back, the sting in her eyes. She didn't want him to see her cry. She reached for his hands, signed always. Behind them, the soft creak of a door. Not right away. Then a voice, sharp, stunned, broke the quiet. "What is this?" Angela turned. Lucas froze. In the doorway stood Anthony Turner, motionless, eyes locked on the scene in front of him, like he couldn't make sense of it. Angela stood slowly, protectively. Her body instinctively shifted between Lucas and his father. "We were learning," she said softly. Anthony stepped further in, his voice brittle. "Learning what? Hand tricks?" Angela didn't flinch. "He's speaking." "With his hands?" he snapped. "You think that counts?" Lucas shifted behind her, shrinking into himself. Angela's voice stayed steady. "Yes, I do." Anthony looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "You were hired to clean, not play therapist." She took a breath. "I wasn't playing, I was listening." Lucas reached up then. His fingers moved, urgent, panicked. "Stop, please." Anthony's eyes snapped to him. "What's he doing?" Angela didn't answer. Lucas signed again, hands trembling now. No yelling, no yelling. Anthony took a step forward. Lucas flinched. His whole body recoiled, the air catching in his chest. Angela stepped in. Her voice cracked just once. "Please, don't." Anthony looked from her, to his son, to the small flashcard on the rug between them. It said family. He said nothing, just turned, and walked out. The door shut behind him, like the end of a conversation no one wanted to have. That night, Angela packed her things. No dramatic exits, no fight. She folded her uniform with care, placed the last flashcard in her coat pocket. One word, friend. Lucas stood by the window again, but this time not because it was routine. This time he watched her go. He didn't move, didn't cry, but his hand pressed softly against the glass, as if reaching through it, as if asking, "Don't leave." Angela turned at the gate, looked up. She signed, from a distance only they could understand, "I'll come back." Then she stepped into the rain, and the house fell silent again. The house had never been loud, but now it was hollow. Angela's absence wasn't marked by sound. It was marked by everything that stopped happening when she left. The cookies in the kitchen went uneaten, the flashcards sat untouched on the nursery shelf. The little speaker in the corner stayed silent. Lucas didn't sit by the window anymore. He just lay curled on the rug, motionless, eyes blank, the stuffed dog clutched tight to his chest. The staff whispered more now. Even the butler moved slower, unsure. They all felt it. Not just the silence, but the loss inside it. Anthony tried to carry on. He told himself it was better this way. Simpler. Back to structure. Back to schedule. He glanced at Lucas during breakfast, but the boy didn't lift his head. No signs, no movement, just stillness. Anthony cleared his throat, pushed a plate forward. "Eat," he said. Lucas didn't blink. Anthony stood, grabbed his briefcase and walked out, but not before noticing the flashcard tucked into the edge of the placemat. Friend. The letters were shaky, the corner torn. He didn't touch it. That night, the storm came. Heavy rain, wind against the windows, the kind of noise that made silence inside feel even deeper. Anthony poured himself a drink, sat in his office surrounded by screens that blinked with numbers, news, meetings waiting to be joined, but none of it filled the room. He glanced at the door, listened for footsteps that didn't come, laughed bitterly under his breath. What did he expect? A miracle. The next morning, Anthony reached for his tie as he passed the front hall, stopped halfway when he saw movement on the stairs. Lucas, standing barefoot, pajamas wrinkled, hair unbrushed, his eyes red, not from sleep, from something deeper. He walked down slowly, one step at a time, like he wasn't sure the floor would hold him. Anthony froze. He didn't speak, just watched. Lucas reached the last step, stood there, small and shaking. Then, he lifted his hands. Not high, not fast, just enough. "Don't go." Anthony stared. Lucas's fingers moved again, slower this time. More careful. "Dad." The briefcase slipped from Anthony's hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. He dropped to his knees. "Lucas!" His voice cracked. Lucas stepped forward, reached for him, pressed his hands to his father's chest. "Dad." Again. Anthony pulled him in, held him tighter than he'd ever allowed himself to before. "I'm here," he whispered over and over. "I'm here, son. I didn't know how." Lucas didn't cry. He just held on, as if that was the only thing keeping him from disappearing again. They sat there for a long time, on the cold marble floor beneath the staircase. Father and son, no words, just breath, and the smallest flicker of something that hadn't lived in that house for a very long time. Hope. Anthony didn't go to work the next day. He cancelled meetings, left the phone on silent, let the outside world wait, because inside this house, something had shifted. Lucas followed him that morning, not closely, not confidently, but enough to be noticed, enough to matter. They sat in the kitchen while the staff pretended not to stare. Lucas watched the light through the window as Anthony poured orange juice, awkward, like he didn't know what to do with his hands. He set the glass in front of his son, didn't say anything, didn't need to. Lucas signed, "Thank you." Anthony paused, then, with stiff fingers, signed it back, "Thank you." Not perfect, not smooth, but real. Lucas smiled. Just a little. That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep with the stuffed dog in his arms and a flashcard still tucked under his pillow, Anthony sat in the nursery alone. He looked around, really looked, at the books on the shelf, the worn rug, the faint marks on the wall where posters used to hang. He picked up the flashcard beside the lamp. Family. And something inside him broke open. The next morning, Angela opened the door of her apartment to find Anthony standing there, suit wrinkled, eyes tired, one hand gripping a small sheet of paper like it was the only thing keeping him steady. It was a drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. In shaky letters beneath it, me and friend. Angela didn't say anything, not at first. She just looked at him, waiting, measuring. Anthony held out the paper, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was wrong," he said. "You didn't just help him. You helped me see him." He looked down, collected himself. "I don't want you back as the maid," he said. "I want you back because he needs you. And so do I." Angela's eyes softened. She didn't move. But her silence, it wasn't a no. He knew it. That weekend, she returned to the mansion. Not with cleaning supplies, not in uniform, just her hands. Her promise, her presence. Lucas saw her from the top of the stairs. His mouth didn't open, but his face did. He ran down to meet her, threw his arms around her waist, held her like he was afraid she'd disappear again, and then, stepping back, he signed, "Friend, family, home." Angela knelt, signed it back, "Home." By Monday, things were different, not louder, not busier, but alive. Anthony started learning signs, 1 a day. He fumbled, got frustrated, but Lucas was patient. At dinner, they practiced together. Angela taught them how to sign listen, feel, safe. And slowly, word by word, a father and son began to rebuild something they hadn't even known how to name. In the evenings, Lucas would sit by the window again. But now he wasn't waiting for someone to come back. He was watching the sky shift, the birds move, narrating it all with his hands. Anthony would sit nearby, flashcards in hand, still learning. And Angela? She was building something bigger. Angela returned not as staff, not as help, but as someone finally seen for who she truly was. She didn't knock. She didn't wait to be let in. The butler opened the door with the faintest nod and stepped aside. The house was quieter now, but not empty, not aching, just calm. Angela walked through the marble hall, past the staircase, toward the nursery where everything had started. Before she could reach the door, she heard small footsteps. Fast, light. Lucas. He ran full speed into her arms, pressing his face into her side. No words, just the strength of a child who finally knew what it meant to be safe. Then he stepped back, and with clear, confident hands signed, "Friend, family, I missed you." Angela signed it back, smiling through glassy eyes. "I missed you too." Weeks passed, then months. Seasons shifted, but the feeling stayed. The house didn't change overnight, but the energy did. Laughter didn't echo in, but it lived here now. Lucas signed more every day, words like joy, light, music, strong. His favorite sign was still Dad, not just because it meant something, but because now he had someone to say it to. Anthony tried, and failed, and tried again. He fumbled signs with the seriousness of a man used to getting things right the first time. But Lucas always waited, and when his father got it right, he beamed, not with noise, but with pride. They sat in the garden some evenings, just the two of them, learning, listening. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the conservatory, Anthony signed a full sentence. "I see you. I'm proud of you." Lucas stared at him for a long moment, then climbed into his lap, and rested his head against his chest. Angela began something new, a program built with Trivex's support, called Connective Communication for Children. She worked with therapists, educators, families. Not all the kids were like Lucas. Not all the families had fathers who came around, but all of them had something in common. They needed to be heard, not just spoken to. She started with 10 families, then 50, then hundreds. Back at the mansion, Lucas flourished. He started drawing again, pages filled with colorful stick figures and shaky words. One morning, he left a picture on Angela's desk. 2 people, holding hands, a sun overhead, a heart between them. Beneath it, in block letters, "My first words weren't words. You heard them anyway." Angela didn't say anything. She just pressed the drawing to her chest. and smiled. There was no dramatic ending, no final applause, just a home. Not perfect, but real. A boy, not broken, but whole. And a woman, not just a maid, but the bridge between silence and sound, fear and love, distance and understanding. In a quiet room with wide windows and soft afternoon light, Lucas signed 3 simple words. I love you, to Angela, to his father, to the space that used to be empty but no longer was. Angela signed them back. So did Anthony. No one spoke. No one needed to. Because in this house, love no longer needed volume. It had learned how to speak, in the only language that ever truly mattered.